Let's bring in right now editorial writer for the Washington Post, a man who was there, Jonathan Capehart.
Yep.
Okay,
wow, Jonathan. So he goes through this speech, and it's fine, and then he starts answering questions, and it goes off the rails quickly. Talk about what you saw there.
As you've been describing, the speech actually was pretty good, a very good history lesson about just sort of his denomination within what he's calling the African American church. But then the Q&A started, and one person I talked to yesterday, who I looked to put all these sorts of things in context, I said, "What did you think?" And the person said, I felt like I just watched James Brown on the stage of the Apollo. I mean, Gene is right, Bob Herbert's right, Rev Wright soaked up every ounce of Klieg lights and attention and applause he could get yesterday at the National Press Club. I thought his in the Q&A, his demeanor and his tone was condescending. He was talking down, particularly to that poor reporter from USA Today who was asking those questions, and it was painful to watch because you could see with every answer he gave, he was just sticking a knife into the Obama campaign, making more trouble for that campaign. Which, when this exploded on the scene, you just knew he was going to come back. You just knew that. However long it was going to take, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, Reverend Wright would come back in some way to haunt the Obama campaign, and yesterday was Fright Night.
Yeah, there's some questions that are unanswered in my mind about this.
What was the worst part?
Well,
of it, Jonathan, what do you think the worst part was for Obama? The worst part of the speech?
The Q&A.
The Q&A was the worst part, but there were several instances where it basically sent shivers down my spine. I was joking with friends that if I were on the Obama campaign yesterday, I'd have a vodka IV drip. When he said that on November 5th and on January 21st, I'll still be a pastor. The implication is, young man Barack Obama, no matter what you do, I'm still going to be who I am and what I'm doing. You may or may not be president. The other thing he said was he told Barack Obama that on January 21st, if you're the president, I'm coming after you because you'll be representing a government that's basically grinding people into the ground. And then the third thing, which he basically took Senator Obama in a bear hug and then jumped under and threw him under the bus, and that was when he said, the kickoff where. The question was, you were disinvited, Reverend Wright, to Senator Obama's kickoff. Why was that? And he said the kickoff was a political event. Senator Dick Durbin was the one who kicked that off. I'm a pastor. I really kicked off everything in prayer with Obama and Michelle and his daughters, and then they went upstairs for the political event. I mean, he's just tied himself to Senator Obama in such a way that, Joe, you're right. It's going to cause Senator Obama problems in the remaining states ahead, and particularly in Indiana, where the race, at least the last poll I saw, between him and Senator Clinton is virtually tied.
Well, what I thought was interesting, Jonathan, is that I was listening to his speech especially, but even in the Q&A, there were some great points, and there were some great messages about the African American experience and the African American church and the emotion that may come up during very different kinds of sermons, but and also a great point that he made during the Q&A and in the speech about patriotism. Here he is, and he actually takes a jab at Dick Cheney, and if there wasn't the shrillness to it, it actually might have had some weight. Take a listen.
I feel that those citizens who say that have never heard my sermons, nor do they know me. They are unfair accusations taken from sound bites and that which is looped over and over again on certain channels. I served 6 years in the military. Does that make me patriotic? How many years did Cheney serve?
Yeah, it's a good question. And also he has a goddaughter serving in Iraq. I mean, there were, underneath it all, some great points here to be made, don't you think?
Yes, and that particular clip you showed was during the Q&A, and when he mentioned his goddaughter in Iraq was during his speech, and it was an incredibly effective moment where he was basically saying, look, I'm not the crazy man I've been portrayed, yet in the Q&A he became the crazy man he's been portrayed. And you know what? And one last thing. When he said this is not an attack on Jeremiah Wright, this is an attack on the African American church, that I found to be the most egomaniacal thing of all. He is not the black church. And as one person pointed out to me, you do understand that in the same speech, he made a big point of saying that he is within an overwhelmingly white denomination. His Trinity Church is a black church within the overall United Church of Christ, which is predominantly white.
Okay.
All right.
He is not the African American church.
All right. We do keep hearing that time and again. So that's a great point to make, Jonathan. But you're right. He seemed a bit unbalanced in that Q&A part of it. Jonathan, thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
Sure, Joe. Thanks, Mika.
Soon.
Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you when we're in Washington.